What if I told you that right now, as families across America are celebrating Christmas, there are 5 people somewhere in the world who were stolen from their home on Christmas Eve 1945. They were children then. Maurice was 14. Martha was 12. Louis was 9. Jennie was 8. Betty was 5. If they're still alive, they'd be in their 80s and 90s now. Their names are Sodder, and someone knows what happened to them. December 24th, 1945. Christmas Eve in Fayetteville, West Virginia. The Sodder family home sits on a hill overlooking the town. Inside, George and Jennie Sodder are putting their 10 children to bed. It's late. The younger kids are exhausted from the excitement of Christmas Eve. They've hung their stockings. They've left cookies for Santa. They're dreaming of presents and snow and magic. George Sodder locks the doors. He checks the windows. He's a careful man, an Italian immigrant who built his life in America through hard work and determination. He's made enemies. He's spoken out against Mussolini, criticized the Italian government, refused to donate to Italian fascist organizations. In 1945, with World War II just ending, that kind of talk makes you a target. George has received threats, anonymous letters, strange phone calls. But tonight is Christmas Eve. Tonight, his family is safe. Or so he thinks. Around 1 a.m., Jennie Sodder wakes to the smell of smoke. She shakes George awake. The house is on fire. They can see flames through the bedroom door. George jumps up, starts screaming for the children. 4 of the kids are sleeping downstairs near George and Jennie's room. They grab them quickly. Marion, 17. Sylvia, 13. George Jr., 16. And baby John, 3. They're safe. But 5 children are sleeping upstairs. Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jennie, and Betty. George runs for the stairs. The flames are too intense. He can't get through. He screams their names. Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jennie, Betty. No response. Just the roar of fire consuming his home. He runs outside, tries to find a ladder to reach the upstairs windows. The ladder that's always leaning against the house is gone. Just gone. He runs to his truck, thinking he'll drive it under the window, climb onto the roof, break through. The truck won't start. 2 trucks, both dead. Engines that worked perfectly yesterday won't turn over. The Sodder family stands in the freezing December night, watching their home burn. George is screaming. Jennie is screaming. The 4 children they saved are screaming. But from the upstairs windows, where 5 children should be screaming for help, there's nothing. Just silence and flames. Jennie tries to run back inside. George holds her back. The house is collapsing. Within 45 minutes, the entire structure has burned to the ground. Just a smoldering pile of debris and ash. And somewhere in that wreckage, George and Jennie believe, are the bodies of their 5 children. But here's where this story becomes something else entirely. When the fire department finally arrives, 2 hours after George called them, they don't search the ashes thoroughly. They don't sift through the debris. They barely look. The fire chief, F.J. Maurice, stands at the edge of the wreckage and says, "The fire was so hot, the children's bodies were completely incinerated. There's nothing left, not even bone fragments." George Sodder stares at him. He's seen fire. He's worked with fire. He knows that human bones don't just disappear. Even in the hottest fires, crematoriums running at over 2,000 degrees, bones remain. They have to be ground down separately. But the fire chief insists. The children are gone, turned to ash. There's nothing to bury. George and Jennie should accept it and move on. Except George Sodder doesn't accept it. He can't, because the fire wasn't that hot. Parts of the house are still standing. The kitchen is partially intact, and in the debris, George finds things that shouldn't have survived if the fire was hot enough to incinerate 5 children. A box of Christmas ornaments, barely singed. Newspapers, readable. And most disturbing of all, a telephone wire on the roof. Cut, not burned. Cut clean through. The ladder that was always against the house. George finds it thrown into a ravine 100 feet away. His trucks that wouldn't start. The next day, both engines work perfectly. The fire chief's explanation doesn't make sense. Nothing makes sense. Unless the fire wasn't an accident. Unless someone cut the phone lines so the Sodders couldn't call for help. Unless someone disabled the trucks so George couldn't reach his children. Unless someone started that fire deliberately. And unless someone took those 5 children while the house burned. It sounds impossible, But in the days after Christmas, witnesses start coming forward. A woman who runs a tourist court halfway between Fayetteville and Charleston says she saw the Sodder children in a car on Christmas morning. She's certain. 5 children, matching their descriptions, in the back of a car with Florida license plates. They looked scared. The driver wouldn't let them speak. Another witness, a man traveling through the area, reports seeing a fireball thrown onto the roof of the Sodder house around 1 a.m. Not a chimney fire spreading naturally. A projectile. Something launched deliberately to start the blaze. Then there's the insurance investigator. He's sifting through the ashes weeks after the fire when he finds what he claims is a human organ. A heart. He says it belonged to one of the children. But George Sodder demands it be examined by a pathologist. The pathologist's report is shocking. This isn't a human heart. It's beef liver. Fresh beef liver. Planted in the ashes. But why? Why would someone plant fake evidence unless they were trying to convince the Sodders their children were dead? George Sodder hires private investigators. He puts up billboards across West Virginia with photos of his 5 missing children. The billboards offer a $5,000 reward. In 1945, that's a fortune. The billboards stay up for decades. George and Jennie never stop searching. They never stop believing their children are alive. And then the phone calls start. Anonymous calls in the middle of the night. A voice whispers, "Your children are alive. They're in a safe place. Stop looking or you'll never see them again." Click. George tries to trace the calls. Impossible in the 1940s. He begs the caller to prove the children are alive. The calls stop. In 1947, 2 years after the fire, a woman approaches Jennie Sodder at a grocery store. She leans in close and whispers, "I've seen your daughter. She's working at a restaurant in Charleston. She looks exactly like the girl on your billboard." Jennie races to Charleston. She checks every restaurant. She finds nothing. Was the woman mistaken? Was she lying? Or was she warning Jennie that someone was watching? Then in 1950, George Sodder receives a letter. No return address. Inside is a photograph of a young man in his 20s. On the back, written in neat handwriting, "Louis Sodder. I love brother Frankie. Little boys." A 90132 or 35. George studies the photograph. The face, the eyes, the shape of the jaw. It looks like Louis, his 9-year-old son, now grown. But the handwriting doesn't match Louis's childhood writing. The message is cryptic. "Little boys." What does that mean? The number sequence. Is it a code? An address? George hires a private investigator to trace the photograph. The investigator takes George's money, promises answers, and vanishes. Never heard from again. The photograph becomes one more mystery in a case filled with mysteries. But it's also hope, because if that photograph is real, if that man is Louis, then at least one of the Sodder children survived. At least one of them is alive. George and Jennie spend years chasing leads. Every sighting, every anonymous tip, every whispered rumor. They travel to orphanages, convinced their children might have been placed in the system. They check reform schools, thinking maybe the children were taken and given new identities. They investigate human trafficking rings, religious cults, organized crime families. They follow every thread, no matter how thin. And people keep seeing the Sodder children. A waitress in Florida swears she served Martha in 1952. A construction worker in Texas claims he worked alongside Maurice in 1955. A schoolteacher in Ohio reports a student who looks exactly like Betty, but gives a different name. Are these sightings real? Are they wishful thinking? Are they cruel hoaxes? George and Jennie don't know, but they can't ignore them. Here's what makes this case so disturbing. The fire chief who investigated the Sodder house fire? F.J. Maurice, the one who claimed the children's bodies were incinerated completely. Years later, he's arrested and convicted of stealing body parts from corpses for his own collection. He's not just incompetent, he's corrupt. He's a ghoul. So when he says there's nothing left of the Sodder children, can we trust him? But did he lie to cover something up? Then there's the insurance angle. George Sodder had recently canceled his fire insurance. The insurance agent was furious. He told George, "Your house is going to burn down, and your children are going to be destroyed." Weeks later, the house burns. Is that a threat, a warning, or evidence of foreknowledge? And the threats George received for speaking out against Mussolini? In 1945, Italian fascist sympathizers are still active in America. They have networks. They have resources. They have methods of silencing critics. Taking someone's children and making them disappear would send a message. A brutal, unforgettable message. Did George Sodder's political beliefs get his children kidnapped? There's another theory. West Virginia in the 1940s has a thriving black market for children. Couples who can't have kids of their own pay thousands of dollars for babies and young children. Brokers facilitate illegal adoptions. They target poor families, immigrant families, families who won't be taken seriously if they report their children missing. The Sodders are Italian immigrants. They have accents. They're outsiders. Perfect targets. What if someone was watching the Sodder house? What if they knew George and Jennie had 10 children? What if they saw an opportunity on Christmas Eve? Start a fire. Create chaos. In the confusion, grab the 5 children sleeping upstairs. The fire destroys evidence. The family's traumatized. The authorities don't investigate thoroughly. And by the time anyone realizes the children weren't in the house, they're already hundreds of miles away with new names and new families. It sounds like a movie plot, but it happened. Children disappeared from house fires all the time in the 1940s. Some were recovered. Most weren't. And in an era before DNA testing, before national databases, before Amber Alerts, a child could vanish and never be found. Jennie Sodder refuses to give up, even as years turn into decades. Even as her other children grow up, get married, have children of their own. Even as George's health fails and his hope fades, Jennie keeps searching. She updates the billboard every few years with age-progressed sketches of what Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jennie, and Betty might look like as adults. She keeps the phone line active, hoping for another call. She saves every letter, every tip, every scrap of possible evidence. In 1968, 23 years after the fire, the photograph of the young man claiming to be Louis arrives. It's the last significant lead the Sodders ever receive. After that, silence. No more sightings. No more calls. No more letters. Just the terrible weight of not knowing. George Sodder dies in 1969. He's 73 years old. He spent 24 years searching for his children. He never found them. He never got answers. He never got justice. At his funeral, his surviving children stand around his casket and make a promise. They will continue the search. They will find the truth. They will bring their siblings home. Jennie Sodder lives until 1989. She's 90 years old when she dies. 44 years of searching. 44 Christmases without Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jennie, and Betty. 44 years of wondering if her children are alive, if they remember her, if they know she never stopped looking. She dies without answers, without closure, without peace. But the case doesn't die with her. The surviving Sodder children, now elderly themselves, continue investigating. They keep the billboard up until the 1990s. They respond to every tip, no matter how old. They submit DNA to databases, hoping for a match. They contact genealogy researchers, hoping someone will recognize a family resemblance. And here's what's haunting. If the Sodder children were taken alive in 1945, they could still be alive today. Maurice would be 92. Martha would be 90. Louis would be 87. Jennie would be 86. Betty would be 83. Elderly, yes, but alive. Living somewhere with no memory of their real family. Or living somewhere with complete memory, but too afraid to come forward. Think about that. What if you discovered at age 80 that your entire life was a lie? That your parents weren't your parents? That your name wasn't your name? That somewhere in West Virginia, a family spent decades searching for you? Would you want to know? Would you be able to process that truth? In 2001, the children's eldest brother, Sylvia Sodder, who escaped the fire, gives an interview. She's in her 70s. She says, "I still dream about them. I dream that they walk through my door and say, 'We're home.' I know it's not logical. I know they'd be old now, if they're alive at all. But in my dreams, they're still children. Still the way I remember them on Christmas Eve 1945. The Fayetteville community has never forgotten the Sodder children. There's a historical marker near where the house once stood. Every Christmas Eve, locals leave flowers and candles. 5 candles. One for each missing child. It's become a tradition, a way of saying, we remember, we haven't forgotten, we're still hoping. Modern investigators have looked at the case with fresh eyes. They've examined the evidence. They've interviewed descendants of witnesses. They've used computer technology to age progress the children's faces to what they'd look like today. And they've reached a consensus. The children did not die in that fire. The heat wasn't sufficient. The debris field wasn't consistent with 5 bodies. The bone fragments weren't there. Something else happened. Something deliberate. Something evil. But who? And why? The theories are endless. Italian fascist revenge. Black market adoption ring. A personal vendetta. A random psychopath. Insurance fraud gone wrong. Government conspiracy. Every theory has evidence supporting it. Every theory has holes. The truth is buried under 79 years of dead ends and lost witnesses and destroyed records. What we know for certain is this. 5 children went to bed on Christmas Eve 1945. They never woke up in their own home. Their parents spent the rest of their lives searching for them. And someone, somewhere, knows what happened. Maybe it's someone who participated. Maybe it's someone who heard a confession. Maybe it's someone who saw something and kept quiet out of fear. Or maybe it's one of the children themselves. Maybe Maurice or Martha or Louis or Jennie or Betty is watching this right now. Maybe they've spent their entire lives with a nagging feeling that something doesn't add up, that their childhood memories don't match the stories they were told, that their parents' faces don't look quite right. That Christmas Eve always feels wrong in a way they can't explain. If that's you, if any part of this story resonates with something buried deep in your memory, there are people you can contact. The Sodder family descendants are still alive, still searching, still hoping. DNA testing is available. Genealogy research can trace your origins. It's not too late for the truth. And if you know something, if your grandfather told you a story about Christmas Eve 1945 that never sat right, if your grandmother mentioned knowing children who appeared suddenly with no past, if you've heard whispers in your family about something terrible that happened in West Virginia, speak up. These children deserve to be found. This family deserves answers. Justice doesn't have an expiration date. The Sodder children case is one of America's most haunting, unsolved mysteries. Not because of what we know, but because of what we don't. 5 children, gone in the night. No bodies, no closure, no justice. Just a burning house, a grieving family, and decades of unanswered questions. Every Christmas Eve, when families gather and children dream of Santa Claus, somewhere the truth about Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jennie, and Betty Sodder still exists. In someone's memory, in someone's confession, in someone's guilt. The truth is out there. It's always been out there. We just haven't found it yet. George and Jennie Sodder died without their children. They died without knowing if their babies were safe, if they were loved, if they ever thought about home. That's a grief I can't even comprehend. But you know what's worse? The idea that we could have answers, and we're not looking hard enough. That we could solve this case, and we're not sharing it widely enough. That somewhere, someone knows exactly what happened, and they're staying silent. I've spent months researching this case. I've read every document, every interview, every theory, and I keep coming back to one image. Jennie Sodder standing at that billboard year after year, hoping someone will recognize her children, hoping someone will call, hoping for a miracle. She stood there for 44 years. She never got her miracle, but maybe we can give it to her now. Maybe if enough people hear this story, share this story, investigate this story, we can finally find the truth. Maybe someone watching this video is related to one of the Sodder children and doesn't know it. Maybe genetic genealogy will connect the dots. Maybe this Christmas, 79 years later, the Sodder children will finally be found. Or maybe they won't. Maybe this is one of those cases that never gets solved. One of those tragedies that haunts us forever. 5 children, gone, just gone, on Christmas Eve, while the world celebrated peace on Earth. So here's what I'm asking you to do. Not for me, not for the algorithm, but for Maurice, who was 14 and probably tried to protect his younger siblings. For Martha, who was 12 and probably woke up terrified in the smoke. For Louis, who was 9 and sent that photograph in 1950, or someone sent it pretending to be him. For Jennie, who was 8 and shared her mother's name and probably called for her mama as she was taken. For Betty, who was 5 years old. 5. Barely old enough to remember her real family. Barely old enough to understand what was happening. Subscribe, because every subscription pushes this video to more people. Every subscription means more eyes on this case. Every subscription increases the chance that the right person, the person who knows something, will see this story and finally speak up. George and Jennie Sodder spent their lives searching. They died without answers. The least we can do, the absolute bare minimum, is keep their children's story alive. Keep asking questions.